Good morning and welcome to Our Black News, where we're laid back, relaxed, and we have a really great guest. My anxiety has been shot off the wall with expectations of having Mr. Don Samuels here with us today. Also joining me, my co-host, longtime co-host and friend, Mr. Anthony Scott from Scott Collection. So you
Greetings.
had some feel you was gonna give. You want to break that down quickly?
Oh, just basically, I wanted to remind people about Minnesota's Black community in the 21st century, one of the books, and also for the award-winning book, The Scott Collection, which is 500 pages, three books from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, collected and produced by my father, Walter R. Scott Sr. So I wanted to make sure that the listeners and our tune-in worldwide audience get a chance to review this. And also, there's a page in here I want to bring up, Don, during the show. Maybe I'll just bring it up when our guest is on.
Okay. I would like to know about that page. You should tell a brother ahead of time, but I'm gonna let you slide. Yeah, we have a very special guest today. Former school board member, director,
City
Minneapolis
Council?
City Council person, and a solid community advocate. Um, he and his wife started the Peace Foundation, really good organization, responsible for squashing the Murderapolis tag in Minneapolis, especially in the North Side. And we're glad he's able to join us. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Don Samuels to our program. Welcome, Mr. Samuels. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me, guys. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, we're glad that you just decided to make contact. Well, we made contact with you because we contact a lot of candidates that we never hear anything from, but that's okay. I forgive them in the long run. They'll learn. Um, but I guess we want to start out. This race for CD5, Minnesota Congressional District 5. It has an incumbent that I guess was re-endorsed or endorsed again by the DFL, but you decided to stay on and on the grind and be in this race. Why is that so important to you? And we just deep jump right into it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we started late. We started in March. We were not involved in the caucus selection process. So we didn't have delegates that were predisposed to us. And
Okay.
so within a very short time, we had to get up to speed. And we decided not to go to the convention. But then things looked so positive, it seemed like we had a chance to block. And so we did jump in at the last minute, and we did block her for one turn, which was the first time she'd ever been blocked. Um,
Oh,
and uh, and so that shows the kind of strength we have. So we're planned to and still intend to go on to the election, to the precinct caucus. I'm sorry, um, to the preliminaries.
okay. So do they? So now, is there one more process that you have to go through before like you're the person, or is your name? Will your name in November be on the ballot as of today?
No, we're going to go. We're going to August 9th.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
the primary.
is the primary,
Mhm.
and so we both are going towards the primary. I just officially registered yesterday,
Yeah, I
so
saw that.
we're both going forward to the primary, and that will be for the Democrats to select between both of us, and then the winner will go on to meet the Republican in November.
Okay. I read an article yesterday written by North Minneapolis stakeholder, I guess, who I know that probably did not write the opinion piece in the Star Tribune, and it was out in March of this year where it said maybe that you shouldn't run against Ilhan Omar, that she should be the chosen one again here in November 2022, and good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, what is the vibe that you're getting overall from people that you talk to in the fifth congressional district? What kind
Yeah,
of change do they want to see? I guess that's my question.
yeah. Well, like most of the people in the district, I voted for uh, Ilhan Omar first time around, and we got progressively disappointed because of her contrarian approach to problems, her extreme views, and her willingness to alienate people both in Congress and in the community. And so we decided that something had to change. We can't allow this to go on one more term. And so, as I've said, my opponent goes to Washington to make a point. I'm going to Washington to make a difference.
Yeah, and
but I have a concern. One concern about this endorsement process. So now, after August 9th, I mean, what could happen, or is there something that could happen that wouldn't allow you to run? Or, I mean, that process that they're going to choose the Democratic person they choose from their party, but then what happens to other candidates?
Yeah, well, it's one candidate from each party, and you have to register, registration is now, and so you can't switch your party or run without a party. You have to be basically written in at that point if you lost the primary.
Okay, so from that process, if you don't prevail in that process, is it that you still can't run? Is that
right? Pretty much, yes.
Okay. Well, I think that's for myself and listeners to kind of understand this process. And
it's very important. And so people don't vote in the primary because they think it's not the final race. It's not that important. Yeah. But in fact, you're choosing between two people that 200 people presented to you, or one person that 200 people presented to you, and whoever is competing with them. And so this is your chance to say who should represent your party instead of just leaving it in the hands of 200 people you don't know, which is what the convention was about.
That's kind of a scary thing to think about. And
it is.
Yeah, and I was just getting some text. I'm glad Anthony asked you that question to clear that up, because in Minnesota, Republicans and the Democrats, a lot of folks don't understand the process. I don't understand the process. I don't know how many times you can this or that, and people are texting and saying, well, will you be on the ballot in November? That's why I would generate that question, but also the primary. So it's you battling Ilhan Omar. And Mr. Samuels, I've watched, kind of kept my mouth shut, but I've watched the 5th Congressional District and some of the extreme tweets and things like that of Ilhan Omar. And I can't say I'm for or against her, but I just don't know what endorsing a candidate in Texas, in California, or Seattle is doing for the 5th Congressional District. And even when Congressman Ellison was in office, he would make sure, as Mr. Tucker would always say, Anthony, that people in the community ate. And I haven't seen that from Ilhan Omar anywhere, where there's people in the community that she's concerned about. I mean, the Urban League is right there, virtually ghost town. That building in that corner, with the exception of the old Thor building across the street, but we don't really know what's going on with that. So, without getting too much far in the weeds, what kind of battle is this for you? With all the violence in North Minneapolis and the 5th Congressional District in general, South Minneapolis, North Minneapolis, Richfield, and the surrounding areas, and the uptick in crime. This is a loaded question. There's a lot here. Closing of St. Joseph's boys' home over in South Minneapolis, not giving an outlet to taking in children that might need extra help. From a congressional point of view, how can you address that and fix that? How would you do that better? Well, I can't say better than Congresswoman Omar, but how would you do that differently for our community?
Well, Don, before Don Samuels, Mr. Samuels, before you answer, Don, could I add to that question?
Oh, well, that was a lot. Go ahead.
It was a lot, I know, but when I look at being a longtime South Minneapolis resident, living in Minneapolis all my life, 70 plus years, and living a half a mile or so from the George Floyd area, I really don't see any activity or any planning to really do something about that. I mean, to really bring this area back. I mean, that was a horrific event. And to happen myself to watch it live on
Mhm.
Facebook, I just happened to be on there. And to
Mhm.
see that, I'm telling you, it was just something that I'll just never forget. And people all around the country were calling me about that. And so we need to really do something, but I don't see any of the politicians. I don't see anybody doing anything. And you can go 10 blocks south to 48th in Chicago and look at that area. Look at that area with the business and how it thrives. They have a clinic there. They have all types of restaurants. They have therapeutic services there. I mean, that's what they need to do in an area of the most blight. How would you respond to Don's question and my lengthy question?
Okay. Well, let me answer them separately. First of all, as I've said, Congresswoman Omar is in Washington to make a point, not a difference. And I'm going to be there to make a difference. And the other thing is she has a global exalted view of what she can do and achieve. So she's dealing with the nation, the world, and in a way that is contrary to the DFL. And so she takes all kinds of votes around the global issues and setting herself up as in isolation as having a superior view. At the same time, she's ignoring this stuff at home, right? So she is not doing constituent service as well as she should. She's not being available and accessible. I was just at a meeting recently, and a constituent told me that she got an invitation by email to the town hall meeting. And she immediately clicked to get on it, and it said it was sold out. And so that's the kind of accessibility limitation that she has. And so because she's not here present for most of the year, she lives in Washington, she's not holding town halls, she's not responding to citizens. She's out of touch increasingly with the needs here, what the priorities are here. And so after George Floyd, she could easily say, yeah, defund the police, thinking that she was in touch with the African American community, which is what George Floyd came from. And so she led a whole bunch of people in this city down the path that Black people wanted to defund the police. And people have a lot of confidence. A lot of our allies have a lot of confidence in taking that position because of her. In fact, 78% of African Americans didn't want to reduce the police, and that showed up in the election. That 56% of the city voted against that. So she's out of touch because she's distracted by her biography and her TV appearances, etc. And I'm going in there. I'm going to be paying attention. I'm going to be accessible. I'm going to live in the city. I'm going to live in the same house I've lived in for 25 years. I'm going to be attentive. I'm going to be accessible. I'm going to hold meetings around the district, etc.
Okay.
Now,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
On the issue of George Floyd Square, yes, that was a great tragedy. I go there and I still see Black businesses, that died there. And so this is the problem with when something is simply led by activism rather than activism informing something. Activism doesn't consider all the 360 degrees of an issue. It focuses on one thing. And so it needs to have its input, but it can't control the process. Because you have neighbors, you have business people, you have to move through the community. You have people who are walking, biking, driving through there. All of those people are ignored because of these strong voices. And so the way this is going to be solved is to take into account the interests of the citizens, the residents, the businesses, and honor those people, because those are the people who have really invested.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I'm glad you brought up the defund the police, because I sat back and it's really interesting, Mr. Samuels. when I first heard it, I wrote it down on a Google Doc and put the date and time. And it came from Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Mm.
And you were absolutely right in pinning that, because that's a very important psychological piece in our community, because we're boxing with psychological boxing gloves, and they're hitting us from every direction. And when you put out something like that, you're right. Black people, they will pick up the phone and call the police. That's what they want to do if they need the police.
Yes.
Especially when they've done nothing wrong and they're trying to be protected from someone doing something wrong to them, or seeing something happening, or witnessing that. So you had all these people, her whole camp was exposed because they all defund the police. As soon as she said that, and I'm being objective, I just want to tell you what I saw, right? As soon as she said that, number one, we don't talk to the age group 12 to 21 at all. Nobody. So the news that they're getting in secondhand and over in conversations with other adults that say, hey, they want to defund the police, or watching these marches. So if the police are gone and we don't have any money, just a small section of the community that makes a big problem, there's an uptick in carjackings, there's robberies, there's more shootings and killings, and all that stuff just skyrocketed. And that was the effect of defund the police.
Yeah.
And she's
Exactly.
not taking account for any of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the things that, as you're saying, there's a complete unawareness of, is just how much the criminal community was emboldened.
Yeah.
You know, when guys are trying to do wrong, and they hear the leaders, who are usually the ones who are establishing the taboos, say, you can't do this in our city, you can't do this. We set laws and so on to constrain extreme behaviors. And those people are saying, you know something, guys, the guys that you think are constraining your behavior, we're going to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And so now the guys are experiencing this, the troublemakers, hey, not only do I hate the police, but now the leaders, the bosses of the police hate the police too.
Yeah.
And they quit and they leave.
Yeah, and they quit. So here we go. We're in charge.
Let's go rob a grocery store. Okay. And
we saw behaviors that had been unprecedented, publicly, out in the open, things being done that, because there was confidence there.
Yeah.
And
the defund was so ridiculous because they came with defund with no plan.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to defund, okay, well, what is your plan? What is the alternative that you've thought out to cover all the myriad of things that police do?
Yes.
Now, myself being a child protection supervisor for over 20 years, I worked with police. I work with all kinds of police, and they go into some of these houses, they don't know what's in there. They don't know what's going on. So, I mean, they have to do such a variety of things that we need to have probably better training for our police, but we absolutely need them. And we need a police force that's going to protect the citizens, do what it says, protect and serve.
Yes. And, African Americans are very familiar with this paradox. We can hold two paradoxes at the same time, because this country has treated African Americans badly for centuries, but African Americans still love the country, right? And
I'm not moving
to be a part of it. We know how to hold those two things at the same time. So we know that the police have sometimes been unfair and unjust, and at the same time, we need them. We can hold those two things at the same time. And Congresswoman Omar didn't understand that.
Yeah, and one more thing I have to insert into this. And I always jump on this because I'm like 100% engaged in education right now, unbelievably. But defund the police without a plan was number one. That was the first strike. The second strike was all the protests. And the third strike for me is, if you live, or you are the congressperson for the 5th Congressional District, there are over 100 schools, maybe even double that, my estimate, in the 5th Congressional District. There are several school districts within the 5th Congressional District. The closer you get to the city, the lower the proficiencies become. And we don't even have to talk. We don't even have to talk about standardized testing right now.
Yeah.
The expectations, Lord, the biodeterminism, because some teachers actually teach with a lens of biodeterminism that, hey, your mom didn't even graduate high school, so it's in your DNA, and you're not going to do any better than your parents did. So that's placed in our school. And I've been waiting for this congressperson. She's not my congressperson. I got a congressperson I haven't seen since I've been in St. Paul. Everyone's always looking for her, but that's a whole different show. But ever since I've been following this, I've never disliked her. I thought she was kind of fiery for a minute there. But she never said, fix education. Bring education back to our community. Why is it that we have schools in the Twin Cities where Black kids' math proficiencies have been 5% since 2016? And they've never cracked 20% in reading proficiencies.
Sure, and we pay for that ineptitude. We pay for that.
Has never said a word or addressed that.
Well, look, you know, Don, we had a teacher's strike recently.
Yeah.
And Congresswoman Omar's interest in education was limited only to showing up at a teacher's strike, and never showed up at the problem of student performance, which is the outcome that the teachers were hired for. But the premise on which the whole educational system is based is to produce educated children. And, you know, that issue has been haunting me all my life.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, I eventually created what we call the Hope Collaborative, and we put a little group of people together, and we had the principals of the top performing inner city, low income schools with children of color, the top performing ones. We brought their principals to the Capri Theater over a period of 2 years. And they spoke to the district leadership and to the other interested folks in the community and explained what they did to perform be above the state average in these challenging situations. And so I've been really obsessed with this for a long time. I've been a tutor, a mentor of young people. Most recently, we had a young man that we sent to De La Salle and sent him off to Arizona University, you know, after mentoring him and having him in our home for 4 years and through high school. And so we take this seriously. We've let it change our lives. We let it impact where we live so we can feel what the people in our community feel and represent their interests. That's why we're obsessed with education. As you know, as a family, we are.
Yes. And as you should be. And I'm glad that you said that. And it's really strange. And I mean, I'm not going to go into the weeds, and I could. That's the old me. I don't do that anymore. But when I'm looking at this thing, when I'm looking at schools in the city of Minneapolis proper, high schools with less than 200 students, I'm not going to name any schools, but trust me, I know what school it is. And there's no effort. And I mean, it's Congress. I understand that's federal. And you have the state. But it seems that if you have that much pull and that much Twitter power, you could get some people in this area to do what they need to do to get back on track. It's a lot of work, but in under 2 years, Mr. Samuels, under 2 years, any school can start performing at 70% proficiency with their kids. But we have to change the way we're teaching.
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
We're using an old Danielson model in the schools. I mean, you know, I'm just singing to the choir with you and Anthony, but
absolutely.
That model is dead.
Yeah.
And we're producing functional illiterates instead of college, a lot of functional illiterates, but it's just really strange to see what's coming out. And I work in the school system, and it scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, you know, when I was just 27, I lived in a tough part of New York City, the Lower East Side, and there was a family that I kind of was mentoring of kids, and the 8-year-old couldn't say his ABCs, and he didn't know his timetables of any, you know, to start. And I said, "You go to school?" He went to school. Yeah, he was in special ed. There were 8 kids in his school, He didn't know his ABCs beyond D. And within 2 days, I taught his entire ABCs and his 2 times and 3 times. And I was amazed that this kid goes to school every day, and I could teach him in 2 days what he couldn't learn over a year. And so, it's not the kids, it's not a child problem.
No,
it's an adult problem.
No. Our kids are bright. Our kids are bright.
Yeah.
And it's like we got a pile of gold. We're millionaires with kids with brains, and we're not moving them along from dependent learners to independent learners. But we'll put a pin in that for a minute. I want to get into the violence, the unprecedented, as you said, things that go on in Minneapolis, not just North Minneapolis, in the 5th Congressional District, and
carjackings,
just stuff like that, craziness that seems that people are pandering to from the effects of defund the police.
Mm-hmm.
From a Christian,
well, it's true. It's so true. As Mr. Samuels was saying earlier, I was in a Walgreens store in my neighborhood, and I saw a group of people come in with a shopping cart, and one lady was like on some type of a disability cart, and they filled this shopping cart up. And on the way out, I noticed that they didn't come through the checkout line. They were heading straight for the door, and they were grabbing whatever they could off of the shelves, and they just left. And so I talked to the cashier about it. I said, well, what is this? What is going on? He said, no, this happens. This happens regularly. I mean, I'm like,
yeah, and then stores.
Better. I guess my own point bringing that up is we can do better.
Absolutely. And Sandra and I made a pledge that we would live in the most challenged community in the city, and we moved into our home 24 years ago. And so when people talk in the city about what's happening, it's happening. The worst of it is happening around us. When I say the worst of it, I mean people die around us on a regular basis.
Yes.
A young man just died 600 feet from my house this week. This week, okay? And he died right in front of the home where Anaya died. I'm sorry, where Trinity died, bouncing on her trampoline. That's just 600 feet from my house. And there's a gas station another 900 feet from my house on West Broadway, where several young men have been killed this year. And over the last 2 years, maybe a dozen people have been shot there. And, I mean, when you go to a square mile around, this is the worst part. And so the authority that I have, it's not about, me being presumptuous. It's me being in the middle of it.
Yeah.
In the middle of the worst of it. I know what I'm talking about. So when people were saying Don Samuels is overplaying, he doesn't know what he's talking about, these things are not that bad, defund the police, we don't need them. I knew what my neighbors were feeling. My neighbor down the street had her company install a bulletproof headboard, a metal plate behind her headboard. You understand?
Ooh. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
but Mr. Samuels, how do we begin to address these things? How do we begin to, we've seen all this escalation, carjackings at numbers I've never heard of in this neighborhood, in this area. And that's the thing. We're looking for some solutions as to how we can begin to deal with these things. In your community, I mean, I'm sure you have, community organizations, and we have, but how are we going to deal with this in our community?
Well, first of all, we can't have leaders acting crazy. I mean, this didn't happen because young people got crazier. It didn't happen because the community got more tolerant. It happened because 9 people stood up in Powderhorn Park with a big sign that was almost a person, each letter a person tall, saying defund the police.
Yeah.
And they made a pledge to do that. And then our Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar, jumped in and became the loudest voice because she has the biggest range. Now she's got the suburbs. And she's telling the folks in the suburbs, we're going to defund the police. And so the suburbs now come into the play. And so we can't have crazy leaders. Crazy leadership leads to crazy communities.
Oh yeah, I have to agree with that 100%. So I mean, I'm glad you said that about North Minneapolis, because I have people telling me, and it's hearsay, so you can't really run to Facebook or run to Twitter with it. But you know, there are kids and families in the middle of North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis that do not sleep in their beds anymore. They make a cot on the floor below the window.
Yes.
That's no way for humans to live.
Yes.
Ever.
I don't know if you read the Wall Street Journal article.
No, I have not.
Ago. Yeah, it was an article that featured my neighbor and me. We are two families. Are four of us from the Minneapolis 8 who sued the city to have more police. And he told the Washington Post, I'm sorry, the Wall Street Journal, that his child was sleeping on the floor for a year, that he got so traumatized his eyes would roll over to the back of his head. And the doctor recommended that they needed to leave because, unfortunately, they're even closer to Broadway than us. They had to sell their home and move. And so, ironically, two of the people suing the city are no longer in the city because they couldn't take it anymore. This is, people don't understand the trauma. We've lost 6 neighbors who sold their homes.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't just find a new rental. They had to sell their homes, put it on the market, find a new home, and move.
And so when you say that, we know this, there's a lot of us that know this is going on, know this is happening. It's evidence. I mean, it's in the Wall Street Journal. It's all over the place. It's in the Star Tribune. People talk about this. And they've talked about it for a long time. This is not something that happened overnight. This is something that it was growing. That still is growing. And there's never been a stop to it at any time or anywhere, from the education piece to the crime piece to the housing to the unemployment, and our agencies that are meant to represent Black Minnesotans that have not, and it's not their fault. I mean, they're really nice people. Don't get me wrong. I think they're really nice people, but you have to have some business acumen and some bulldog in you to go after what you want and be a winner. And that's the bottom line. And so with that said, it goes back to my beginning conversation. One thing I like about when he was Congressman Keith Ellison is that he made sure the constituents that he liked got fed in the Twin Cities. I don't care if that was funding. I don't care if that was, hey, you guys should partner. Having meetings in Washington, D.C. with important people in housing, in employment. He did that. And I don't see the return on anything of this incumbent 5th Congressional Congresswoman. I don't see a return on investment of the people in the 5th Congressional District. So that becomes a problem for me. I have a problem when, you reach out, because I've invited Congressman Ilhan Omar to be on our show. We're at the bottom of the barrel. We don't charge any money. We're not complicit. Our accounts receivable is not complicit to stay on left or right political sides. And we interview Democrats and Republicans and independents and green and wild thinkers. So we don't have a problem with that, because Anthony's here. And I'm glad he didn't bring
45. Up what about you? No, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, there we go. 45. Yeah, okay. But the thing is, Mr. Samuels, and this is about you, what steps do we take? Say you don't win in November, or the primary, the 9th, and your name's not on the ballot. And Omar is headed in for a win, because I'm just going to tell you really honestly, the Republicans don't have the juice, period. And I'm being honest. I'm the one who said Trump was going to win in 2016 on July 3rd. Okay, I predicted that. Okay, but anyway, say that doesn't happen for you. How do we engage Ilhan Omar, who might possibly be the winner by a landslide, to get her to pay attention to what's going on in the 5th Congressional District without the pandering and the loud one-sentence slogans, to make sure that there is some positive change? especially in the middle of Minneapolis.
Well, first of all, let me say I'm going to win. Okay.
Okay.
I have a top tier team that ran the mayor's race. So the Joe Radinovich is my campaign chair. He knows the city and the voters and the demographics and the data, and and he brought his team with him. And
Oh,
then
wow.
huh?
Keep going.
And
Oh,
then I'm a known candidate. So I was on the city council for 3 terms and the school board for 1 term, and I've been active in the community. So, and last year I took a opposite view to Congresswoman Omar on public safety, and my side won, right? And so we are going to win this election. But let's say, just for theory, that I did not win this election. What I did during the last couple of years, I didn't have any political position at all, and yet, as I go around the city, people are thanking me for being the most significant contributor to stopping the defund the police.
yeah.
So that means that a citizen can do something if we stay active, if we stay vocal, and if we organize. We have to organize. And so the citizens have to come together and demand what we want. We can no longer, they call it the exhausted majority, the people in the middle who are sick and tired of the craziness, who are sick and tired of this or either or, and want to be safe. It's like we want to be safe. We want our children to do well in school, but we have to organize for it. And that's why I like, there's a group called the Students Parents Union or something like that.
Yeah, Minnesota Parents Union. Yes.
Yeah, Minnesota Parents Union. Yeah, we need somebody to bring the voices of parents together, because we're divided, and we're gonna have to start organizing around interests and formalizing those organizations so that our voices can carry and have weight for our politicians. Otherwise, our politicians are going to say, "Hey, I'm not going to have any town hall. I'm not going to, make myself available, and I'm just going to put on a show and then fake accessibility, and I'll win the next time around."
Yeah. Yeah. That's usually how it happens. I like to talk to you
So
about
just 1 second, Don. So my neighbors and I, it's 8 of us who filed the lawsuit.
Mhm.
8 of us. That's a lot more meaningful than just one. And a lot more people wanted to join it. It was just inconvenient at that time. So we can get together on important issues.
Yes, you certainly can. I want to talk to you about the city of Minneapolis and its leadership. During the memorial for George Floyd, I got to see some pictures of our mayor, or your mayor, Mr. Jacob Fry, Mayor Jacob Fry, hanging out over there by Cup Foods. And to me, the pictures were a little bit disturbing, but that's just my personal piece. But how would you engage Mayor Fry? And I don't know your relationship with him at all whatsoever. I'm not privileged to that information, which is none of my business. But how do you engage this mayor who, to me, seems to sometime and respectfully pander to even Ilhan Omar, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's talking points, and bring them in? I watched yesterday on another local Black news agency that had a broadcast where Congresswoman Omar sat there and spoke her truths, which were slogans mostly. And I was really disturbed by the disinformation that was going out to the Black community, or the community in general, who might watch that program, the one or two. And getting back to my original question, how do you engage Mayor Jacob Fry, the other mayors of the cities that are having issues, which are under the auspices of the 5th Congressional District, to try to make change in all these? I mean, it's a tough cookie to cut, but there's change needed in every level all across the board. So how do you address these mayors? Now, I'm not just going to pick on Mayor Fry, even though I had his picture, but how will that happen? Can you kind of give us an overview or a draft of?
Yeah, well, first of all,
Go ahead.
First of all, we know that these are unprecedented times, right? And so it's no mayor who signed up to run for office prior to George Floyd anticipated anything like that happening. So it kind of put an extra test on all of our leadership. And Mayor Fry was hands down the best candidate for mayor in the race last time around. So I supported him, and I want to see him succeed. And so, unlike my opponent, who had a press conference in front of City Hall saying, vote for anybody but this guy, when in fact he was the best of the bunch. I've never seen a politician, one incumbent politician, taking on another one like that, you know, in a situation like that, publicly like that.
Yeah.
I will not do that to the local leadership. I will collaborate, you know, and nobody's perfect. And if we tear down the people we have, then we will compromise their effectiveness. And so I'm going to work with the mayor, and I'm going to mayor of the different cities, and find out what can I do in Washington to help, right, to strengthen public safety, because Washington can make a difference. We know that. We know that funds can be garnered, and when the congressional, the Minnesota congressional cohort gets together on an issue, we can move things. We can move policy, and we can move funding. And we have, you know, we have Angie Craig, we have Dean, and we have Betty McCollum. If we get together on something, as we will, we're going to be able to get resources here to address public safety in cooperation with the mayors of the region.
Okay, Anthony, go ahead.
Well, no, before I wanted to not forget this. As I mentioned, our book, Minnesota's Black Community in the 21st Century. If you go to page 50 of that book, you'll see a picture of Mr. Samuels. And you actually see me on the same page.
Wow.
Up there. I didn't know if that's, I think it was kind of interesting that Mr. Samuels, I really wanted to thank you for allowing yourself to be in our book. I don't know if you have a copy, but if you do need one, you can let me know. It's an award-winning book. And actually, there's a mention of Sandra in the book also. For some reason, we didn't get her picture. We have the bio in the book, but we didn't get a picture for some reason.
That's because you knew that it would just cancel out all the other ladies. Everybody would want to turn to her page, you know.
Get your points. Get your points, brother.
Yeah. Cha-ching. You got like 80. Yeah. All right. We like that. So, did you have anything else, Anthony? I don't want to cut you off. I know you.
Well, no, it just seems like the whole political thing it's just on a cycle. We're on a cycle. I mean, if you go back fairly recent history, I mean, when bad things happen, then all of a sudden people get into fast motion and make like they're going to do something, but it's not sustained. I mean, you can go back to, Rosa Parks. You can go back to LBJ signing the Human Rights Act when you started having affirmative action. You started having to open these college things up. A lot of jobs were opening up. A lot of avenues were, but then that just kind of fades away. And then now we get into the George Floyd's and the child shootings, that things that should have been addressed. But then we get in fast, we're going to do something, and then it fades. You know, and I mean, I think we have to have sustained action. It's like, go back to my days as a child protection supervisor. I would tell someone this is what we're doing, and then they wouldn't do it. And they say, well, you got to write them up. I said, well, no, maybe I have to keep reminding them. Maybe I have to give them another reminder once or twice. Let's not go with one thing. We have to continue to be sustained in what our mission is and keep mimicking that and showing people what our mission is. And that's where I see people get into these jobs, and like Ilhan, not to pick on, but she seems to be more of the celebrity type, as opposed to really digging into the things that's going on here. I mean, I think the George Floyd thing, again, is a big thing for all of our politicians to try to figure it out for this neighborhood, because the world looks at this.
Well, you know, I tell you, yeah, as you
Yeah.
are right. We have these cycles of enthusiasm, and we go back to normal, and that's why I believe that leadership should be selected based on performance over time, concerns and authenticity over time, not someone who fits a slogan or spouts slogans or who has a profile of some kind, like that. So, you know, I know you're in child protection. I was a guardian ad litem in St. Paul, Ramsey County for 8 years. You know, so I know that system. And in fact, I'm looking at a painting right here of that one of the young men who was that I was a guardian ad litem for did. Um, is still, you know, he's still rests on my heart. And in fact, I became godparents for a whole family of kids who got placed in with a family member, and when the parents' rights were terminated. So I've been in deep in these issues, okay? And I think we need leadership that is in deep, that is demonstrating that they're not going to jump on a bandwagon for change. And then once the news cycle goes down,
Yes.
they will also change. I'm in it for real. It's a lifetime work for me to focus on the folks who need us most. That's our biggest opportunity for upside growth in our as an economy. If you can lift people who are going to be a drain on the system and make them contributors in the system, that's the biggest investment you can possibly make. And that's why I am where I am and live where I live, being concerned about what I'm concerned about, because I saw the potential for change that America had. I mean, I came here in 1970. Every job I went to, I was the first black man to be in that high position in history, and I had nothing to do with it. It was all done by people who, you know, went to jail, got beat, got killed, so that I could have that opportunity. So I know America can change. And so that's why I'm so passionate about doing my part, because so much was done before I got here by black African American people. And so I'm giving back. Okay? And if I go to Congress, you know, I'll be there, of course, for all people, but I know that we owe a special work for the folks who are African Americans and Native Americans, because we had special trauma, special robberies, and we owe a special debt. And not understanding that, and that if we leave everything to go the way it will naturally, we will go back to where we were, because things are predisposed to go that way, and injustices will creep back up, and inequities will grow. We have the largest gaps in the country.
Yeah.
And if we not on a day-to-day focus on these issues and just jump in when George Floyd dies, nothing's going to change.
Yes.
And,
And we
and
need to not be afraid to, as you know, as black Americans, you know, to focus on our issues. I mean, if you look at people
Absolutely.
that come here, you know, my granddaughter, she's a Hmong, and I've met that family, and they own all of the things they have. They own the place where they had the reception. They own the place where they had the baby shower. They are doing things for themselves. And I just think that
Right,
there's no shame in us doing the same thing for ourselves as
right,
our
right.
priority. Not that we have any disdain or anything for anyone else, but
Yes,
because we have especially if we have the low disparity, especially if we have low results in school, especially if we have the low home ownership, we need
yes,
to focus on the things we need,
right,
because if nobody else is, it doesn't look like we're kind of just thrown into the mix. But I
right.
see we have potential, as Don, I think you said,
Yeah,
we
great
have the
potential.
ability to do these things. We have the
America's
ability.
great America's greatest potential is in the African American and Native American communities, not because we are the smartest people, but because we are the people whose potential has been suppressed historically, and therefore we haven't shown yet what we can really contribute to this country once all of those things are freed up. And of course, we have internal stuff to take care of, as you said. And there's special challenges when you come to America as a group, intact from a certain region, with your traditions and your leaders, and you land in a new country. You huddle together and you plan and you make your way. But when you come from Detroit and Gary, one at a time, from
Florida,
Mississippi, yeah, and you don't have that cohesion, you're just trying to make your way as a single person, single parent, single family, the cohesion becomes difficult. And so we have an extra job as African American people to build that. We have to build what was broken.
yeah,
That's extra work, right? And
Yeah.
so if we can't just lead, who's the leader? No leader. The immigrant groups that come, especially on the largesse of the government, come as groups, and they have a great advantage in that. But we have an extra lift in the African American community, and we have to face that and step up while we also demand more of our community.
yeah. We have a little bit more than 5 minutes left of the show, so there's a couple more things that I want to bring up and talk about quickly here. I mentioned earlier about talking to the youth, and I want to show you this, Mr. Samuels. In 2021, people of color under 20 became the majority in Minnesota. In 2023, people of color under 30 and under will be the majority. This is from the YMCA Equity Innovation Center. It was at a presentation this year, and we move in Minnesota into the minority white. And this is a very interesting stat, because I don't think a lot of people understand this and how important it is to talk to these folks, these youth, 30 and under. I can say that in my age, and get them involved in this process, because the decisions are being made and they're not a part of any conversation at all whatsoever.
Yeah.
So with that said, I guess, and in the last a few minutes here is, you said something very powerful about people coming in groups here. I've watched the Somali community, the Hmong, the Karen community come here, and like Anthony says, do really prosperous things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a Black American and you're from like Detroit, Florida, wherever you're coming from, we should be doing the same things together. But there's so many disconnects.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I won't say the names or anything like that. I mean, there was a day that I would, but I can't work with this person because this person believes one way and I might believe another way. We're back here in the Twin Cities in the 60s and 70s. You could have your different point of views, but still go out and have a burger or beer on Friday. It didn't matter. So we moved away from that cohesion. And I guess if when you win, as you said earlier, when you win, what would you do to kind of put the effort back into building a stronger African-American, African community here in the Twin Cities, along with the Native Americans who's been historically denied also big time, including land rights? Yeah. How would you try to make that happen? Or is there a need to do that? It would seem like there is, but
well, of course, when you're a congressperson, you have to serve everyone, right? So you have to be careful not to seem to be prejudicial. But I live in a predominantly African-American community. Just by being, I went to Ascension School last week, and it's me, Don Samuels. I live around the corner from there, and the kids gathered around me and they said, "We're talking to a celebrity, right?" Now that only has so much weight, but a community. One of the challenges for our community is that people who do well leave. I am not leaving. First of all, I'm going to honor this community. I'm going to keep my house up, live our best lives in this community to demonstrate what it looks like. And so, and to set an example. And if you go out there and you preach, family and so on, people get defensive. But if you live family, if you live effort, if you live hard work, then people see it, and what you are speaks so loud, the world can't hear what you're saying, as they say. And so I'm going to encourage the African American community, the leadership community, to give back, to come back and get involved. And I'm doing that not by a message, but by example, saying, I am going to be the congressman for this district. I am still going to be Black. I'm still going to be living in a predominantly Black community. They're still going to be my neighbors. I'm still going to be relating to the renters, the low-income folks in my community, and from the position of congressperson. And hopefully that sets an example for the rest of the community to say, guys, there's something here. We need to get involved. We need to become part of the parents union,
Yeah.
or the African American Leadership Forum, or we need to volunteer or give back. It's time now for the leadership class to step up. And my dad was a Pentecostal preacher, and I went to seminary. I have an MDiv, so I do know a little bit about the Bible.
Yeah.
And if you look in religion, it's always challenging the people with resources, not with people without resources. That is American culture and capitalism, to put blame on the lowest income people for the way the country is going, for the inequities, etc. You're poor, it's your fault, etc. No, we who have authority, who have power, who have money, we are the responsible ones. We should be given back. And we can't do it with talk and with fake gestures. It has to be authentic and real. And we have to be able to show by our record what we have done to help. And at the end of the day, we're going to meet our maker. But even before that, we're going to meet history. And history is going to say, what did you do for your community? How much did you give? How much time did you give? For more than your family, more than your relatives and friends. We're talking about the community, strangers, people look like you who still are left behind. We got to reach back and lift up.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully we can get the leadership thing in Minneapolis, especially the Black leadership, figured out.
We need to get
because I haven't been able to pin that down for 30 years. And that's way too long. And, you're supposed to respect folks and clap for them until it's your turn, but you can't keep doing that repeatedly to get disappointed. And so, Mr. Samuels, thank you for being on our show today. It's 10:30. Is there anything that you'd like to say in closing, taking a minute, because you'll have the last word and then we'll fade out?
Well, I'll just say, I'm running because I think we can do better. I have a great hope for this country. As I said, I came into the United States and inherited incredible opportunities that were created by people who never even saw the day to enjoy them. And so I know that things can change, and I'm not a frustrated leader. I'm not a leader who is angry with America. I'm a leader who loves this country, who appreciates this country, the progress it has made, and by people who are in much dire straits, more dire straits than we are. People who are desperate situations, change this country so we can have what we have now.
True.
And so we can do better. We can take the ball forward, and each generation in its own time must discover its mission and fulfill it. And we now have a mission to bring this country forward, to really establish justice and close these gaps and dedicate ourselves to the future, suspend our egos, right? Spend less time getting famous and more time getting the work done. That's why I'm going to Congress.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Samuels. Thank you, Anthony, again. We'll be back next week. Thank you for watching Our Black News, Brother Vision Studios.